After the release of Panzer Dragoon, Sega gave the green light for a sequel. However, Team Andromeda planned two. One would go on to become Panzer Dragoon Saga, and the other would be an RPG that explored the series' world and mythos. Sega had no problems with both games, but only made one request. They wanted the RPG to be entirely in 3D. This was a response to Sony, who at the time had signed an exclusivity deal with Squaresoft to bring Final Fantasy VII and all future entries in the series to the PlayStation. At the time, 3D RPGs were unheard of on consoles due to hardware and storage limitations. Most were developed using 2D pixels or 3D assets on 2D pre-rendered backgrounds. With such a daunting task and only half of Team Andromeda, Fudetsugi and his team focused more on the story, world building, and designing the game's mechanics. Once Y was finished, Team Andromeda regrouped into a 40-person team. Fudetsugi had written the story with a smaller cast of characters in mind, as he felt a smaller cast would have a closer connection with the player. He also tried avoiding cliches which permeated RPGs at the time. When finished, the script was over 1,500 pages long. To cut down on development time and money, the devs opted to use Y's engine. However, it had to be slightly modified to allow for open-world exploration. Illustrations and character designs were done by Katsumi Yokota, who had done the end credit illustrations for Zwei. Fudetsugi loved his art style and felt that it fit perfectly in with the series. Despite all of this, the game went through numerous setbacks. It went over budget, missed several deadlines, and went through multiple rewrites. The stress of finishing the game was growing, and reportedly most people had lost relationships over it. Though the biggest loss, and the one that nearly canceled the game, was the death of two developers. Fudetsugi was so distraught over their loss that he nearly shut down the project. However, due to contractual obligations, he had no choice but to continue. Despite all the hardships, the game was finished by the fall of 1997. The soundtrack was composed by three people: Sayori Kobayashi, Mariko Nanba, and Hayato Matsuo. Kobayashi wrote most of the tracks, including the main theme Sona mi Eru ek Sentyu, with vocals by singer Eri Ito. Her inspiration was the soundtrack of Zwei and its use of tribal, classical, and modern music from around the world. The game launched in Japan as Azel, Panzer Dragoon RPG on January 29, 1998. It made its debut in North America exactly 3 months later on April 30th as Panzer Dragoon Saga, while Europe saw a release on June 5th. Panzer Dragoon Saga takes place 30 years after the first game. Upon witnessing the awesome power of their technology, the Empire began efforts to excavate and research secrets of the ancients. The story followed Edge, a young mercenary hired by the Empire to keep watch on one of their excavation sites, high up in the mountains. When the workers reawakened a dormant pure type, it attacked the group and blew open a portion of a wall, revealing what appeared to be a young girl in a deep sleep. At that moment, the Empire's elite Black Fleet, led by the enigmatic Kramen, had shown up to the site after recently betraying the Empire. With no time to lose, Kramen ordered his men to take the girl and execute all workers, including Edge. However, Edge wasn't dead. Surviving the fall and surrounded by pure types, he was saved by a familiar cry. With his newfound dragon companion, Edge swore revenge on Kramen and set off on his adventure. While navigating the mountainous region, players were introduced to the game's 3 major gameplay modes: Flight mode played much like previous games, in which players could fly their dragon through canyons, deserts, and ruins. Walk mode had players take control of Edge. In a first for the series, you can now explore the world and take a closer look at the people in it. Within towns and caravans were shops where healing and defensive items could be purchased. Parts for your gun could also be found that added extra firepower or multiple shots. In both modes, pressing A or C would bring up your lock-on cursor, which would be used to talk to various NPCs, open doors, and search for loot. Pressing Y would bring up your map, and Z would let you choose a designation marker. Then there's the biggest feature in the game: battles. Like most RPGs, encounters were random. Gameplay was a mix of shooting and turn-based systems. You could only carry out attacks when one of 3 synchronized gauges on the bottom right of the screen were filled. Pressing A would fire your gun, while B fired your dragon's homing laser. These options could also be chosen through the command window, where items could also be selected. Players couldn't rely on just one weapon, as certain enemies were immune to either one. Of course, if your gun and homing lasers weren't enough, you could also use berserk effects, which varied between offensive and defensive moves. Each berserk consumed 1 or more gauge, and berserk points, or BP. As the game progressed, more powerful berserk effects opened up that could deliver devastating attacks or potent healing. But the biggest part of the gameplay was positioning. During battles, enemies were centered in the middle, while your dragon could strafe around by pressing left or right. Positioning your dragon in a certain spot could keep you safe or open you up to enemy attacks. A radar at the bottom of the screen would show your position and which positions were safe or dangerous. At the end of every battle, players would be given EXP and money. Your performance was ranked, and upon reaching a certain level, your dragon could evolve into a new form. The dragon could also have attributes customized to be strong or weak in categories including attack, defense, spirituality, and agility. The game spanned over 13 locations, including the Geralt Desert, Uru Ruins, and the sacred village of Zoa. They would pop up and disappear as the story progressed, though most could be revisited to find missing items in areas. Unlike previous games, locations weren't linear and could be chosen on your world map. Pressing X and Y would also show the direction of Kramen and the Empire. Campsites were also available to save your progress and heal. Throughout the story, Edge met with various characters including Gash, a member of a group of grave robbers known as the Seekers, the eccentric scientist Pyatt, his father Vyman, the second-in-command of Zoa, and Anju, the leader of the traveling caravan. But of all the characters, the most important was the mysterious girl from the excavation site. Her name was Azel, a biocomputer drone created by the ancients 10,000 years ago. After her retrieval by Kramen's men, she was revived and became a servant. Edge encountered her and her dragon, Altom, several times. At one point, they were forced to work together after both riders were knocked off their dragons and into the dark tunnels beneath the Uru ruins. These events also led to the two realizing neither were the enemy, with Azel warning Edge to not get in Kramen's way. Edge eventually learned of Kramen and the Emperor's goal. Both were in a race to reach the tower, a dormant monolith left behind by the ancients, whose power was a thing of legend. Its location was obscured by smoke from an ancient airship that protected it, called the Melkava. Once Edge destroyed the ship, he battled Azel again. After her defeat, however, he attempted to take her to Zoa, but it was too late. The Empire's flagship, the Grig Orig, had used its main cannon on the helpless town, annihilating it instantly. Just then, Edge was saved by the Black Fleet, who directed Edge to the tower, where Kramen was waiting. Upon his arrival, Kramen explained that his goal was to use the tower to end the Empire once and for all. Unfortunately, the Emperor took control and forced Azel to activate the tower. Kramen was killed by the Emperor, but he fell victim to a pure type. Edge and Azel escaped the caravan, where they were directed to the location of the Seeker's stronghold. There they found Gash, who was revealed to be their leader. It was also revealed that the Seekers weren't grave robbers, but a secret society of scholars. Their sole purpose was to destroy Sestrin, an AI created by the ancients that controlled all towers. Just then, the stronghold was attacked by the Grig Orig, now under the control of pure types. Though they lost many in the battle, their resolve to destroy the towers was intact. Edge and Azel flew out and began their descent into the tower. Reaching the bottom, Azel opened up the gateway, but had to stay behind while Edge headed into the portal, promising to return. Upon entering Saturn, Edge was confronted by 5 anti-dragons, each representing one of the dragon's attributes. Once defeated, the Saturn AI appeared, and the final battle commenced. Throughout the battle, visions from the past revealed that the dragon was actually an AI called the Heresy Program, whose sole purpose was to destroy Saturn. Upon its defeat, the Heresy Program spoke to Edge, and explained that the divine visitor the game spoke of wasn't Edge, but the player themselves. It requested you to end Saturn by pressing one of the buttons, and doing so saw Edge and the Heresy Program disappear. In the game's final moments, Gash waited for Edge but realized he was gone. A post-credits scene showed that Azel had survived. She purchased a Kulia and set out into the wasteland, searching for a way to find Edge once more. Panzer Dragoon Saga received near-universal acclaim upon its release. Critics praised Saga for its gameplay, graphics, storytelling, and soundtrack, though some criticism was aimed at its incredibly short length for an RPG and easy difficulty. However, every critic agreed that Saga was truly an achievement that could rival anything Squaresoft could put out. Saga is also the only game in the series to receive a DICE Award nomination for Console Role-Playing Game of the Year, though it lost to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of its commercial success. It had done somewhat well in Japan, selling around 110,000 units. However, in the US, Sega only produced 20,000 units, with an additional 6,000 in Europe. This was mostly due to the poor performance of the Sega Saturn. About a year before Saga's launch, the Saturn was already considered dead in many regions. Competition from Sony and Nintendo had eaten away most of Sega's market share, and Sega's poor marketing of the system and botched launch didn't help the situation either. By 1997, Sega had already begun talking about their next console, with then President of Sega of America, Bernie Stolar, quoted as saying, "The Saturn isn't our future." Sega of America had also poorly advertised the game. While it was given plenty of coverage from publications, going so far as to give away the first disc as a demo in copies of the UK publication Sega Saturn magazine, the US and European ads from Sega did a very poor job of explaining what the game was even about. Though Saga never was a commercial success, its legacy still continues. Much like Zwei, Saga has remained an exclusive for the Saturn, though its cutscenes were unlockable in Panzer Dragoon Orta. In 2009, GameTap made a deal with Sega to distribute the game, but it was never released on their service due to technical issues with emulating Saturn hardware. Though fans hoped the game could be remastered, the source code was reportedly lost many years ago, according to series creator Yukio Futsugi. Despite all of this, the game has been able to survive obscurity, thanks to retrospective reviews and improved Saturn emulation. Many who completely missed out on the game have discovered it over the years. Due to its low print run in the US and Europe, complete copies have become highly sought after, commanding anywhere in the hundreds and even thousands of dollars and pounds. The soundtrack has also received several fan remixes and re-releases over the years. In early 2018, Brave Wave Productions released a rearranged soundtrack to celebrate Saga's 20th anniversary. Sayori Kobayashi returned to compose new arrangements of her old tracks, and Eri Ito lent her vocals once again. Though it wasn't a commercial success upon its release, its legacy has only grown over the years. With its innovative gameplay and gripping narrative, Panzer Dragoon Saga has earned its rightful place as one of the greatest RPGs ever made. In Part 4 of the Panzer Dragoon Retrospective, the series will take a 5-year rest, only to reawaken on a new platform and in a new millennium. It told the story of a mysterious young girl freed from her tower prison by a dragon and her journey to unlock the secrets of her past. Panzer Dragoon Orta.